Alright, welcome back to this class of databases, and we are going to this time look at how to create a table or two or more tables that can reside in our database. Our project that we're going to work with today is still Shoppers database, and we are going to create a simple database for a simple shop. If you have not been part of our class, it's better that you look at the previous class that we created, and then you can go along with subsequent classes. Today we're going to look at how to create a basic table and then two basic tables, and then we add them together to form a relationship. And actually this kind of database is what we call a relational database. When we talk of a relational database, we are talking of a database that has two or more database tables that have been linked together. Okay, and one table depends on the on another table. So in such a database, we have what we call the primary table and the secondary table, or what we call a child table and a parent table. So we are going to look at that and how to create a relationship between the two tables. So let's create our first table. When we want to create a table, we said we click at the Create tab and then we select Table Design. There are things that we have already looked at in the previous section. One of them was how to create a field and what a field is. A field, we have said a field is the same as a column in a table. So we talked of a field, and then we also talked of a row. So a database uses languages. DML is for manipulation. How do you interact with the database? And the DDL is for designing. How would you design your database? Okay, so we are still in the design window. This is our design window, and you can switch to the view window, or what we call the data sheet window, but now we are working with a design window. So we are in design window, and we'll have to design our database table. First table that we're going to design is a table to which other tables are going to be linked or attached. This kind of table is what we call the parent table, or what we call the primary table. Why do we call it the parent table? It's because other tables cannot exist unless we have content in this first table that we're going to create. Take for instance, when we walk in a supermarket, or when you walk in a store or a grocery shop, you are going to identify items, and these items are going to be arranged based on their categories. We have laundry section where you can find omo, you can find soap, you can find all sorts of things that you're going to use for in laundry. You can have another section for eats. You can find biscuits there, you can have snacks, you can have you can have various bread, you can have various things there, as long as you can eat them. Then you have another section for drinks. You can have the drinks, you can have sodas, you can have beers, you can have soft drinks. Then you have another section for spirits and wines. There you're going to find Makwa, you're going to find Ondavit, you're going to find Bond 7, you're going to all that kind of stuff, spirits and wines, they're in that section. So those sections that we're talking about, the laundry, eats, drinks, those are categories, right? So you cannot have You cannot store items like beef, items like ice cream, unless you have a category to which they fall or to which they belong. So that kind of database is what we're going to create. We're going to start with a category table that is going to help us to arrange our data. Okay. Otherwise, if you don't have a proper arrangement of data, your database is going to be disorganized, and you cannot easily generate information from your data. Okay, so let's create our first table. Our first table will have a category ID, or what we call the cat ID. The cat ID will help us to be we shall use it as our primary key. Why? Because we don't expect it to change or to get duplicated, or we cannot leave it null. So I'm giving it auto number, and then I'm going to have the first category, the category name. The first category name will have it's just text, because we shall enter IL or drinks. Drinks, we don't have drinks category like 2 drinks, 3, 4, 5. No, you can have characters there like drinks, DRINKS, drinks. Okay, those are characters. Then we would love to identify, if you are to enter the characters there, drinks, how many characters will you accept in a particular column? How many characters shall we allow? Or we can ask ourselves, what is the maximum number of characters that will be acceptable to be entered in that column for a particular row? So there you need to go to the properties and check out for the field size. The field size by default is 255. 255, you need to reduce it to a reasonable number. Possibly the maximum number of characters that will be acceptable can be close to 20. Okay, that means whichever word that you type for a particular row in that column, it will not go beyond 20 characters. Otherwise, if you leave it as 255, you would ask yourself, how many people will be using my database? So every time someone will have a user, that means the system will have to reserve 255 space to your memory space. So you'll end up losing a lot of memory in your computer that you're using to host that database. So it's better to reduce that, and then we can have another item. Maybe that's enough for a category. We just need to store the category ID and the category name. That's a basic table. Okay, just that. Then we need to give or assign our cat ID a primary key. So select the cat ID field name and then click at the primary key to assign it a primary key, and then click save. Once you save, we are going to save our category table as categories. Okay, as categories, and then click OK. Let's switch to the datasheet view so that we can be able to enter data. To be able to enter data in our database table, the first database table we have just created, we shall click the view and switch to the data sheet view so that it can allow us to enter data. The first the first category will be eats. The second category will be drinks. Okay, so you realize that whenever my cursor jumps to the next, I'm provided with another row automatically. We have said this is a row, that's a row, but these are columns. That's one column and the other is another column. And we have said once you create a column, you enter data row up to the end and then switch to another row, enter data up to the end and switch it to another row. Otherwise you don't enter like one row, another row. It's going to reach a time, once you enter like that, it's going to reach a time when you are going to violate the rule of some fields are going to be left empty or null, and the system will give you prompts or error messages. So take for example, if I don't enter anything and I swap to another, yet I identified it as cannot be left empty. Take for example, if I enter, you see that whenever I try to delete, it's giving me a beep to alert me that what you are doing is not right. So that is our first table. When you look at this table, it's just a basic table. When you look at it, it's just a basic table. Now I would love to add or to create another table that will allow me to capture items that belong to one or two or three tables. Okay, so let's create another table. Okay, this one, let me close it for now, but it is still there. You can just double click and access it. Click that and it gets out of the way. Okay, let's create another table for the items. So we shall have the item code, and then we shall give that, let's give it an auto number 2, and then we shall have the item name. The item name we can have just text, and let's leave that to 30 characters. 30, that means we can enter up to 30 characters when it comes to that row or that column, sorry. Then what's the quantity there? How much do we have in stock? Quantity in stock. Okay, how many do we have in stock? We are dealing with a number. How many do we have in stock? So we shall select the data type is number. We talked of a data type in the previous section. The previous section we said a data type defines which kind of data shall you store in a particular column. Which kind of data is it you're going to accept to be entered there? And we have said let's give it a number. Okay, and then what's the cost price? How much do we, okay, what's the selling price? Okay, let's start with the CP for cost price, which was a number. No, we shall enter currency because we are going to deal with money. And then we have the selling price, the S, this, and still is we are going to look at still money. Okay, yeah, okay. And then alright, so if that's our basic, and maybe we'll look at the format. Which kind of format shall you allow for the first currency? By default it will put a $sign for us, and let's take a Geno. Okay, let's take a Geno, and the Geno, even this, let's take Geno. Okay, let's just take Geno. Alright, so there we are. Now let's save, but before we save we want to give remember the concept that each table should have a primary key. Otherwise, if you don't attach a primary key, you're more likely to have data duplications and data inconsistency. So it's better to have a primary key attached to each table. So select what you need to have as a primary key that will not be easily duplicated, and it will not repeat itself, and finally it will not be left null. So we shall have our auto number section, that's our item code, and then we click primary key. Once you do that, save your table as items. Okay, it's an items table, and click OK. So we basically have two tables together. We have this table, the items table, where you can enter figures there, and then we have this other table. The two tables are not linked in any way. They are independent tables. They are independent of each other. Okay, but what we want to do is that we want to add the items table. Items table need to be dependent of the categories table. That means if you don't have a category for that item will not belong anywhere. Alright, so we need to have the dependency. We need to have the items. Each item that we enter in this table, it is attached to the category. We need to find a way to link the two tables together. The only way that we can implement that is by use of a foreign key. Then what is a foreign key? In the past section we looked at a primary key. Beside the primary key, it uniquely identifies a row. Then what is a foreign key? A foreign key is that key whose data has already been used in one or two tables as a primary key. I repeat, a foreign key is that column whose data has appeared in one or two tables as a primary key, as long as it has been used as a primary key somewhere in one of the two tables. And now you are borrowing that entry into another table. It's now used as a foreign key, meaning it has not been initially part of this table, the items table. There is a table, there's a column that you're going to add. Initially it has not been part of it, but it's going to be brought in to be able to link the items table onto the categories table. And that's the primary key, this column. As long as we have used item ID number 1, item ID, code category ID number 1 and category ID number 2, and we import them into this table, it means that here it will be a primary key, and here it will be a foreign key. So let's implement that. I'm closing it because I'm going to alter table. I'm going to change the structure of this table. So I need to close it first. Or you switch to, if you don't need to close it, you just need to switch to the design window and say you create a cat ID, which has been utilized here, cat ID, and then you enter it there. There's something that you need to understand here. As long as you need to implement a foreign key, this means that the primary key, you need to study the primary key is cat ID. Now I go to the design view. You need to match auto number and the size. Once the two do not match for the next table, for example, this is auto number, cat ID, auto number, and then you come here and say cat ID, I'm giving it text. Ladies and gentlemen, the thing is not going to act. It's not going to work. It's just going to fail because The two do not blend in any way. Characters do not blend with numbers. This is a character. It will accept character values, and this one accepts numbers. Okay, so what you need to do is to ensure that what you have as a cat ID and its auto number, here it will be instead of having auto number, we shall have number. Why not auto number? We have said earlier on that a number and an auto number, both of them remain numbers. The difference is auto number that we have used here in category ID of categories table, it is going to automatically generate itself. We don't need to generate it manually. However, once we use it this side, we shall use number, not auto number. Why? Why not auto number? Because time is going to reach. It's going to reach a time when you need to enter some values, but this one automatically will generate itself. It will end up entering values that do not yet exist in the previous table. So to avoid that mistake, we need to assign number in the foreign keys. As long as you're going to use it as a foreign key, you need to assign it as number. So select that. The other side, it was the size was long integer, which is true, and the side is also long integer. So that's okay. And then save changes, made. After that, yeah, you can switch back to your datasheet view and you have our category done. Still, our tables are not yet linked. Once you click at the categories table, the two tables are not yet linked. We have just established a way that is going to enable us to link the two tables together to form a relationship. So how do we do that? To do that, you need to close first the two tables. Close them first. And then switch from the design, from the create tab to the database tools. Once you are in the database tools, you will see this button of relationships. In the relationships, what you need to do, click at it to establish a relationship between the categories table and the items table. This means that the categories table needs to be there first, and then we can possibly have the items table. You cannot have an item unless you have its category. So it makes the categories table a primary table, or what we call a parent table, and then we have the items table to be the child table or the secondary table. So let's add them to our relationship window. You can choose to use the double click format. Double click at it and it will get added. Let's double click this one also to get added, or you simply click at it and select add. Alternatively, you drag and drop. Okay. Oh, drag and drop will not work. So let's just select that. You can choose to double click and click add. So the two tables get added. This is a categories table and then we have the items table. After doing that, click close. So we have two tables. We have the categories table and we have the items table. The categories table, which will be our parent table, it has cat ID, and the items table, it has cat ID. It's not a matter of getting the ID and you drop it on the ID. No. Get your primary key, which is the cat ID, and drop it on a category in the items table onto cat ID. This one will enable us to add a relationship. So you point, use your mouse pointer, click, left mouse click and hold, then move, don't release the mouse button, hold it until you drop it onto the cat ID. Drop it there and the window will pop up. What's the use of this window? This window enables us to identify errors before we establish our relationship. This means that we are getting the cat ID from the categories table, which we did, cat ID from a categories table, and we are going to drop it onto, it's going to make a relationship with the items table, which is this, and the bond will happen onto cat ID, which is that. Suppose you had made a mistake of getting this and you carelessly drop it anywhere. It means that we have cat ID from the categories table, which was true, and then you dropped it on the items table, which is this table. You dropped it on SP, which was wrong. SP. You intended to drop it on cat ID. So you simply select this. I intended to drop it on cat ID. Doing that, you have just corrected an error. Then you need to enforce referential integrity, and then possibly you need to check cascade update. Means whenever you update something, automatically it will get updated in all attached tables, and then you cascade delete. Once you delete, it will cascade, it will get updated or deleted from all attached tables. After doing that, you click create. Okay, and your relationship has just been established. So that's the way we establish a relationship. If you need to edit the relationship further, you need to clear it first. Okay, but let's save for now and then click close. So our relationship has been established. Let's open this. Double click to open. Yes, it's now open, but notice the way it opens. It doesn't have anything there, right? But check the way this one opens, the categories table. Once it opens, you realize that it has small plus signs there. It means that there is a table that has been attached to each of these rows, and that is none other than the items table. It has been attached. So when you look at it, when you click at that drop down, the table will be called. It will be the item code. It means that that item code you can, it's still an auto number, but you can attach an item to the categories, the category of eats. Possibly, let's have bread. How many loaves of bread do we have in stock? Possibly have 50 loaves. What is our cost price? 2,000. What is our selling price? 2,500. And press enter. Now, I want us to pay attention to this. There is, initially, it had what we called the cat ID, which was added and enabled us to create a relationship. But once we call it using this categories, it has called upon the same table, which is the items table, but the cat ID is not there. The cat ID has been taken off to link the two tables together. That's why we don't see it anymore. But in reality, it's there. Alright? It has been hidden off because of the relationship. We have just entered our first record. Why don't we see it in this? Okay, here we can see it. It's there. It has been saved successfully. But when we open this, we don't see it. This means that this window has been called before adding this. Alright? So it's better you close it first and reopen it again. Close it and open it again, and you realize that it will now go back to the database and fetch your record. And this time around, because you've called it independently, it will come with the cat ID, and the cat ID is 1. Why 1? Why not 2? Because the entry that you did, you dropped cat ID 1. Alright? And once you drop cat ID 2 for drinks, and you enter the drink there, maybe Coca-Cola or Peps, I don't know, Peps, and we have 60 bottles. Selling price, cost price is 1,000. Selling price, wow, let's make some profits. Alright, so once you do that, you're going to realize that yes, it's now one record. Let's close it and call it again item. Okay, it's not yet saved because my cursor has not jumped to the next record. Now it's saved. Alright, my cursor has jumped to the next record. So let's close it again, and we call it items, and you realize that now it has added. So it's 2, and we have the cat ID 2. Alright, so let's add another item under still drinks. Let's add Minute Maid. Minute Maid, and we have that. Alright, and then we have that. Let's check our independent table. Open it again. It still opens, but we don't have Minute Maid. Close it, and we call it again. So Minute Maid comes, but this time it has cat ID 2. Is it a duplication? No. Why? But we see 2. We assigned this to be our primary key when we are designing it. Okay? We designed it and we assigned it to be our primary key, but this one is our foreign key. This means that you have Minute Maid and Peps. They belong to category 2. Both of them belong to category 2. But this one, the bread, belongs to category 1. So if at all we had this taken off, okay, if we happen to hide columns, if we happen to hide it, that means we are not going to see any duplication, because this is a foreign key. For it can have repeating values, but repeating values that are referring, they are in reference to the categories table. They are referring to this. Alright, so it's not like it's duplicating. No, it's just a table column that enables us to refer to some column that has the primary keys. Alright, so this is a secondary table, or what we call a child table, that has been added or bonded with the categories table using a primary key. So I want us to get that clear, and once you have that, you know now I have a relational database, a basic relational database. I hope and I'm happy that you have been able to try it out and to do it yourself, to create a table, design a table, simple table, add another simple table, create another column to the second table that you created, then use it as a foreign key to bond the two tables, attach a foreign key constraints there, add the relationship there, and then ensure that the two tables are blend or bond together. One thing that you have to remember is that the primary key, you need to note the data type and the data size or the field size of the primary key of the first table. Then you need also to identify and note the data type and the data size or the field size of the foreign key of the second table, so that those two, the data type and the field size, matches the data type and the field size of the foreign key. Once the two have been done successfully, now you can be able to create a relationship between the primary table and the secondary table, or what we call between the parent table and the child table. I wish you the best until the next time when we meet for the next session of how to create a form. Thank you.